Soar to the Cloud.
Wonderful.
Okay. Thank you, Kennedy, for joining us. This is the OSRBC Monday Night Book Club. Now going on, I don't even know how many guests because it's been crazy. So, you know that we've been reading your Kingmaker series, and we're here to ask you a bajillion questions.
Yay! Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to it. I'm really excited.
We're so excited to have you. Emily, I'm going to grab this first one just because I don't have the heart to stick you with this one, and the group bombarded me with the icebreaker to start off. So, Kennedy, the group wanted us to break the ice tonight by starting out asking you about the trampoline scene in Queen Move. You do realize that you asked the reader to suspend a lot of their knowledge about little kids' sleepovers with this scene's high-risk level of being caught, right?
Right. I mean, and they almost were caught, and the kids did intrude, so that maybe added to the danger of it, the high risk of being discovered mid makeout. At least they were enmeshed in netting, I guess. But there was a lot going on under that net, so. And you know what? It's so funny because people always ask me about the trampoline scene. Like whenever I talk about Queen Move, everyone asks about the trampoline scene. Or in my reader group, people will just post when they're reading the book, I'm at the trampoline, you know? And it's so funny because, and this gets a little bit into my creative process, so I won't go too deeply into it, but music comes first for me when I write. Even when I have not written a book, haven't written anything, I usually have about 50 songs on a playlist because the music starts to kind of paint pictures in my head. And I can't remember who it is. Not Zayn. I can't remember who it is. He used to be in One Direction. He is so cute. And his name,
maybe?
What'd you say?
Harry Styles, maybe? That one?
No. His name begins with a Z. Anyway, there's a song that he has called Trampoline. And it's like a duet with someone else. Somebody in this group knows. Yes. Am I pronouncing it right when I say Zayn? Terry says Zayn, Zayn. Yeah, him. He has a song called Trampoline that he sings with someone. And I heard the song before I even started really writing. And as I listened to the song, I was like, ooh, a trampoline makeout scene, you know? So the music really comes first for me. So that song kind of wrote that scene, actually.
Well, our group spent a lot of time debating about that. So I guess that makes me feel better that we're universal in that.
Right. Everybody fixates on the trampoline scene.
Question 2. If you had to pick a favorite hero from a romance series to be your book boyfriend, who would you choose?
Can I choose 2?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Most recently, I would say Black from Joan Vassar's Black series. The first book in the series is called Black. And it's like, I compare it to Indigo by Beverly Jenkins, but a little more fucking. Can we say fucking?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, you can say whatever you want to say.
You're Kennedy Ryan. You can do anything you want.
I have found out that I cannot. I'm chastised constantly by Twitter and everybody else. Yeah, so it's like Indigo with like a little more fucking. And but the hero is like a fictionalized son of Nat Turner. And it is amazing. Like, it was one of my top 2020 reads. I recommend it to everybody. I've got Andy reading it. I've got Sierra Simone reading it. I've got Sarah. I don't know if Sarah got to it yet, but I begged her to read it. So that probably my most recent boyfriend. He's just so commanding and sexy and intelligent and strategic. Just great. Protective, possessive, all those all those like itty things that I like. And so that would be my most recent. But if I had to, I'm gonna cheat again. because I'm going to give you two other heroes, but they're both Kinsale. Anybody who like listens to me ever in any interview ever knows I like Kinsale is my favorite author. Laura Kinsale is my favorite romance author of all time, and she has a book called Shadowheart. My favorite book by her is actually Flowers from the Storm, which is amazing. But the hero from Shadowheart, she has a medieval series, and there's two books in Kinsale's medieval series. I think it's For My Lady's Heart and Shadowheart. My favorite of those two is Shadowheart. And Allegretto is the hero, and he is a straight up assassin. And I love it because she redeems him, but she doesn't. Like, he remains an assassin. He remains kind of this anti-hero, but he's just incredible. And and the thing I love about that is, I mean, this book was probably written, I don't know, 15 years ago, somewhere around there. And she had this dom sub dynamic in a medieval romance. But he was kind of submissive. Like, I can't even, it's like BDSM elements. Like, it is so ahead of its time, but it totally makes sense the way she writes it. And he's just, Allegretto from Shadowheart. I could talk about Kinsale all day. If you cut me, I bleed Laura Kinsale. So let's not go down that road. I know I started down that road, but pull me back.
All right. Well, I will pull you back with the next question then.
Okay.
We ask all of our authors this question. Do you have a chocolate drawer?
I don't.
Okay.
I have a Diet Coke bin in my refrigerator. That's my vice, is Diet Coke. Especially when I'm writing, I just guzzle Diet Coke when I'm writing, but I don't have a chocolate drawer, no.
If you could have a meal with any author from the past, who would you choose?
Zora Neale Hurston. Yeah, Zora Neale Hurston, without a doubt. Their Eyes Were Watching God is titular. You know, for me, that book changed something inside of me. I never read a book with that level of authenticity. And she does a lot with dialect in that book. And sometimes when authors write with dialect, it somehow, depending on how you as the reader perceive it, it somehow seems to diminish the intelligence of the character. And she didn't do that. Janie, who is the protagonist in Their Eyes Are Watching God, lots of dialect, completely authentically herself, but so bright, so sharp, so intelligent, so wily in a lot of ways. And I love Zora Neale Hurston. So Zora Neale Hurston.
Okay. I got another really fun one here.
Okay.
Which celebrity Chris is your Chris?
Chris Pine.
Mine too.
Chris Pine is mine. I mean, the other two, it's like three, right? The other two Chris's.
Well, there's a bunch. And then if you go even further, there's like, when I first started looking, in Hollywood as a whole, there's probably like 15 working Chris's, but there's like the most famous of the
right,
Chris's.
Like the Hemsworth and like those Chris's.
Yeah.
Chris Pine is mine. That's my favorite Chris. I'm trying to think what I saw him in. I love him in everything. I saw him in Wonder Woman. I saw him in was it Star Trek? I saw him. I mean, everything he does, I see, because I think he's just adorable, but also like so funny. And always kind of himself. I don't know, in every role, he's kind of still Chris Pine.
Yes.
If you had to name your spirit animal, what would it be?
Stacey Abrams. It would be Stacey Abrams. I would worship at my spirit animal's feet every day, and I would wear T-shirts with my spirit animal's name emblazoned on my chest. Stacey Abrams.
Okay. All right. If you had
Georgia too, so I get double doses of love for Stacey Abrams.
She is wonderful. Amazingly wonderful. If you had to be trapped in a house with 5 other authors, a hostage writer's retreat of sorts, who would you want to be trapped with?
Are these contemporary authors?
Writing authors right now.
Writing
like,
authors.
People that you could be at a writer's retreat with, basically.
Okay.
Locked in a house.
Obviously Sarah. I mean, she's like, I love her so much. Last week, when everything was going on with the inauguration, she and I were just blowing up each other's phones with everything from Michelle Obama's pantsuit to Bernie's memes, you know? So I love Sarah. So Sarah, one of my really good friends, Dylan Allen, Andy Christopher, because she teaches me. Like, I don't know half of the things that she's talking about. I have to Google half of what she says because I'm old, you know, and she's always like, you know, like on the cusp of culture. And I feel wizened when I am like an old woman. So I'm constantly like, Andy, what does that mean? Oh, it's an app. Okay. Is that 3? That's 3.
That was 3.
Sarah, Dylan Allen, Andy Christopher, definitely Sierra Simone,
okay.
and Nana Malone. Nana Malone is, everybody knows Nana's fabulous. And she would tell all of us the truth all the time. So she calls herself my life coach. Even when I don't want her to be, Nana calls herself my life coach. Once I was like, I should get a life coach. She was like, you have me. That's Nana in a nutshell.
Okay.
I'm not exaggerating. That's real.
Do you remember the first romance novel you ever read? And is it the one that got you hooked on reading romance?
I was in the 8th grade, and it was Woodowist, and it was The Wolf and the Dove. And it definitely hooked me. Like, I read it. I think I started reading it again as soon as I finished it. I still have it. You know, it's like, so Woodowist, and it definitely got me hooked. And you have to remember that I am a PK, so I'm a pastor's kid, and my mom forbade romance in my house. She called it the devil's books. So I would smuggle all the Woodowists, all the Joanna Lindsay, Jude Devereaux, Julie Garwood, like all of them, I'd smuggle into my house and stuff in my mattresses and hide in my closet. I literally had hundreds of them, and she had no clue. So yeah, definitely hooked. That's like I'm older, you know, so that's kind of what was happening when I was starting to read. I don't even think Kinsale was writing then.
Okay, we're going to transition into some general writing questions about your general writing as a whole. Where do you find inspiration for your characters?
I think that's a complicated question for me, because sometimes the story comes first. So it's it's a broader question. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times the story comes from me first, and then the characters grow out of something that inspired me. Since we're talking about, you know, tonight, All the King's Men, I'll use as an example. I was reading up on the pipeline in the Dakotas, and just started really digging into that issue. And it made me start to think, wow, what if I wrote a character who is somehow passionately, personally connected to this kind of issue? And what if the meet cute was at a pipeline protest? You know? So I am inspired most of the time by things that are going on in the world. I like to think that there's like a nowness to my work. You know, a lot of times when you read my books, you're seeing something that is reflected that's going on right now. And part of that is because I believe that when I write, I don't write something if I don't feel like I have something to say. And my process for writing is very interior. I mean, I know that sounds exterior, but it's very interior in the sense that I never am like, what's the market like? What do readers want? I mean, God bless readers, but that's not what I think about when I write books. It's an interior process where I am asking myself, what am I supposed to be saying right now? Because for me, storytelling is a vocation, but it's also sacred. To me, storytelling is sacred. And I believe it's why I was put on the earth, is to tell stories with impact. And so every time I write a book, that's the lens through which I am thinking, you know? So whatever's going on in the world could inspire me, and then the characters grow out of that. If kind of a roundabout way of answering the question.
Okay.
What is your process for building strong, independent characters?
I just think about, and I want the caveat for building strong, independent characters is that I also like to make them vulnerable, you know, because I think those things coexist. It's not just, no one's strong all the time. And I think that one of the things that I'm constantly looking for is, from the outside, they look so strong. And of course they are. But everybody has vulnerability. Everybody has something they're working on. Everyone is in process. And so I like to write, especially when I'm writing women, I like to write women who are powerful. And that doesn't always necessarily mean like somebody like Kimba, who's like, you know, electing presidents, or, you know, somebody like Banner from my book Blockshot, who is a sports agent and, you know, top of her field in a male-dominated field. I'm starting a new series called Skyland, my return to traditional publishing. It'll be next year. And those are just kind of, they are outsized characters. You know, they are powerful. They are ambitious. They are all of those things. But I really wanted to depict women who are like that, who are housewives, you know, who are stay-at-home moms, who are, do you know what I mean? Because I think sometimes when I'm writing these characters who are like electing presidents and doing all these big things, that the danger of that is that somehow I could communicate, this is power. Do you know what I mean? This is what power looks like. This is what strength looks like. This is what badassery looks like. And it is, but it also looks like, it can look just as easily like someone who has decided that her enterprise is her children and her home. I think that one of the dangers we've seen culturally is when culture makes us think that being a feminist is just this one thing. You know what I mean? When the essence of feminism is choice. Whatever you choose to be, that you become that, you know, you do what you want to do. It's agency. And I want to create pictures of women also who choose to stay at home, who choose to, you know, do something that maybe people don't always assume is that strong, ambitious woman. And just kind of show a full spectrum of what ambition is, and a full spectrum of what power is, and a full spectrum of what strength is. And I like to write principled characters who are flawed. I am not afraid to write flaw. I love writing flawed characters because to me that's a part of humanity. And I think that we all have flaws. It's how we manage them, and when we make mistakes, how we forgive ourselves, and how we seek forgiveness from people that we may hurt. So I don't shy away from that you can be powerful and amazing and also very flawed. I don't know if that answers the question, but
yeah, no, it does. You hinted and you talked a little bit about this before, but I wanted to dive a little bit further into it. And this is about your plotting process. You talked about that your characters kind of evolve from the plot and versus plot being built around your characters. Can you go a little bit deeper into that in your general plotting processes as a whole?
First of all, I am not, like, if you come into my office, there are not, you know, rainbow sticky notes all over the walls. And I don't have like this Kanban board, you know, where I'm plotting out the whole thing. I am not a plotter, but I'm also not a pantser. I'm some hybrid. And it's so funny because name drop Talia Hibbert. She and I are really good friends, and we were talking, and I warn you that when I talk about Talia, I slip into her British accent, so you'll have to forgive me. So we were talking about my process, and I was like, but Talia, I don't plot like that. Like my background is journalism, and I do a ton of interviews for the book I'm reading, for the book I'm writing now. In the last 2 weeks, I've done about 15 interviews, and I record them on Zoom, and then I go back and watch them, once I'm actually writing. And what really feeds my characters and my plot is a lot of times that. Do you know what I mean? When I'm writing a character, I don't, especially one that's outside of my lived or my cultural experience, I don't want to assume. Like, there's an arrogance in assuming that you know what that's like. And I never lean into that. I'm always like, I want to talk to someone who's actually lived this. And inevitably, when I talk with people who have lived those experiences, it grows my plot. It feeds the story, because there are things that they've experienced I would never have known to include in the story. For example, with All the King's Men, I interviewed probably 15 Indigenous women from various tribes, making sure that a few of those women were from Lennox's actual tribe. And I didn't know very much about missing and murdered Indigenous women. It was nowhere in the story. It was through the interviews where consistently just about every Indigenous woman I spoke to brought up missing the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And so that, because it was urgent and it was prevalent and important to most of the women I spoke to, it wove itself into the plot, if that makes sense. So the plot is often growing out of the research and out of the interviews, which is a part of the research. And so back to Talia, I said, I never feel like I know the story. I feel like I have, and this is probably just my journalism training, I feel like I have to go get the story. And so I don't start, when I'm writing a book, I don't start saying, okay, so this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. Loosely, yes, I have a loose framework, but it's only when I go through the interview process and the research process that plot fleshes out. So I was like, I'm not a plotter, I'm not a pantser. I have to go get the story. So Talia goes, oh, you a getter. That's what you are, you a getter. And I was like, I'm a getter. So I'm not a plotter or a pantser, I'm a getter, according to Talia. So long answer, but yeah.
So I feel like you kind of answered this already, but when you're writing, are you thinking about real life events and how to incorporate them into your stories?
Very much, very much. I always quote Nina Simone, who says an artist's duty is to reflect the times. And so for me, and this is not an expectation for anyone else, for me, what is going on in the world is very much present in my mind. Even when I was writing Queen Move, it was in the middle of Gabrielle Union, her case against, I can't remember, Simon Cowell and, her employers for hair discrimination. That's something, and the Crown Act, the Crown Act is right now going state by state. That was something that was going on that I was like, Kimba has natural hair. I want to incorporate this. For one, it's something that people don't think is an actual thing. One of my beta readers was like, did you make up this Crown Act thing? And I was like, no. And she was like, people don't actually, she lives in Great Britain. I don't know if that makes a difference, but she was like, do people in America actually discriminate based on hair? And I was like, if there's one thing we figure out a way how to do in America is discriminate. We will find something to discriminate on, including hair. So yeah, what's going on in the world definitely makes its way into my writing. Yeah.
Okay. You regularly take on controversial issues and topics in your books, subjects that many authors shy away from. How do you find the courage to address the topics that you are obviously passionate about head on?
I honestly don't think of it that way. People say that to me a lot, so I understand that people perceive it that way because people keep saying that. I don't, it doesn't feel like it takes courage to me. And it probably goes back to me talking about how I reach story, which is an interior process. Do you know what I mean? It's like I just ask, what am I supposed to be saying right now? What needs light? We already know there's going to be steam. We already know there's going to be sexy times. We already know there's going to be a happily ever after. Like, we know all of those elements are going to be present. So every story I write is going to have those things. But what else? Do you know, for me, I am a what else reader. And so I'm a what else writer. I write the kinds of things that interest me. And I like romance, obviously, but all these other things. So really, what is fascinating to me right then, and what do I feel like I should be talking about? Once I've decided this is what I should be talking about, I don't feel like it takes courage. I just feel like I'm like, well, this is it, you know? And I'm not the kind of person who, and I know this sounds, I guess everybody would think this, I don't compare myself to other people. I don't look at other writers. I don't look at what other people are doing. I don't care what other people are doing, honestly. I mean, do you know what I'm saying? I don't think what's hot right now, Step Brothers, let me write a Step Brother romance. You know, I don't think in terms of trope. That's amazing. I think tropes are great. I think all of those things are great. I think people who are looking at the market and saying, what can I write right now that's going to make me a lot of money? Or what am I going to write right now that's going to draw readers in? I think all of those are valid processes. You have to figure out what is your path. And for me, my that's not how I reach story at all. It's antithetical to how I reach story. It's just a very interior process. I don't remember what the question was, so I hope I answered it. I have no idea.
Completely.
Okay, good. Controversy. Controversy. That was it. Sorry. Controversy. Yeah, see, this is how I stumble into controversy all the time, and I don't even know it until I'm in the middle of it. So,
are there any subjects or topics that you're interested in, but that you can't see yourself taking on or writing about?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. I'm not interested in writing about like incest, but I'm not interested in it. I don't see myself ever writing it, but I'm also not, interested in exploring it. That's the only thing that comes like right off the top of my head. If I'm interested enough in it, then there's a possibility I will write a story about it. When I say interested, when I wrote Long Shot, which is the most difficult book I've ever written. Believe me, readers tell me that. When I wrote Long Shot, it wasn't because I was interested in domestic violence. It was because I felt compelled. When I saw that viral video of the football player and his girlfriend in the elevator, I wasn't interested in it. I was compelled by it. And I draw a distinction. So there could be something that is not interesting to me, but is compelling to me. And there is a difference. Meaning when I feel compelled by something, it means I have to tell this story. Even if it's not like I'm fascinated by it, I feel like it deserves space. It deserves a light. And for whatever reason, that's what I want to do. So.
Okay. You are known for making your couples work really hard for their happily ever after. You put them, yes, you are. You put them through some pretty horrible trauma, and truthfully, the only way readers can go through some of the torture that you dream up is that you also have a really amazing way of creating couples that the readers know are just so clearly fated or just written in the stars that they know in their guts that it's all going to work out in the end. How do you make sure that you've gotten your reader fully bonded to your couples before you start working your angst magic? Because you're the queen of angst.
Am I?
You are.
I feel like I am. I really don't. I don't. I think that I don't think of it, first of all, I don't think in terms of like, I'm going to put my couple through hell. Like, I don't think about that. that's not how I get to it. Like, I know that it might feel like that in the moment as a reader, like, oh my gosh, what are they going through? Will they make it? For me, it's more about, I don't write from a place of I want to traumatize these characters. I write from a place of I want to write real life. I want to write things that are real. I want to write people. I want to write characters who feel like people. There are characters, sometimes you read a book, often you read a book and you feel like I'm reading characters. The highest compliment any reader ever pays me is to say, and I've had this a few times and it's so rewarding for me, and they said, I didn't feel like I was reading characters, I felt like I was reading people. And for me, that's what it grows out of, is I want to write real things. When readers read my books, I want them to recognize their struggles, the struggles of people they know, of family members, of cousins, of friends. I want them to recognize that struggle. Not struggle for the sake of struggle, but saying this is the human condition. And in the context of human condition, we can be happy. You know, life can be hard, but we can find joy. For me, that's how I approach happily ever after. You know, is yes, of course there's going to be a happily ever after. I also believe that sometimes love shines brightest when it's tested. And so that's what the process is for me. Is not how can I make this traumatic, because I wouldn't write from a place of how can I make this traumatic? How is this real? What are people actually going through in their lives? And someone is actually going through that. And when that someone who is actually going through that reads that book and sees that it ends with joy, that is not traumatic as much for some of them. That's encouraging. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, wow. So this is someone depicting that someone else had this really hard experience and they found joy and they found love and they found trust and they found acceptance in the context of human condition. Well, maybe I can too.
Lapses in time are a very powerful device in writing and one you leverage often. What draws you to telling stories that are more spanning in time frame versus more traditional condensed stories, short stories?
Probably growing up on these miniseries like the Thornbirds, you know, like, do you know what I mean? I mean, these stories that span decades, Lace, you know, it's like books, they were books, but these stories that are epic, you know, I'm drawn to epic story. And sometimes that can be done in a compressed time frame. Sometimes it's in years that we get to know characters. There are certain stories that I want, like when I look at something like Queen Move, you literally meet these characters when they are infants, you know, and by the time the story's over, they're near 40. We see the scope of their, not only the scope of their entire life, we see the scope of their relationship over years. And for me, that can be really, really powerful. Like the book that I'm writing now, it's a much more compressed time frame. And it's not like, you know, it's not a second chance. So it's not something happened, we split apart, and then something brings us back together, because that's kind of the essence of second chance. And I love second chance. So that's a theme in some of my work. But it doesn't have to always be that way. I just enjoy epic stories. And it could be growing up in romance, growing up on the bonkers early romance, like, you know, the Joanna Lindsay and the, you know, like those stories that span a lot of time and that do a lot of work in 350 pages or whatever. And my books do tend to be longer. Like the average romance novel is like, I think around 80,000 words, and mine are like 120 to 130,000 words. So people are like, oh, so you basically write 2 romance novels in one. And I do, you know, because I want that space, and I want the reader to feel like, you know, like, oh my gosh, I just went on this journey with this couple. And sometimes time and seeing the development of those people over time injects that epic feel into a story. So I think that's why I do that sometimes.
Okay, we're going to shift into all the Kingsmen duet questions now. Finally, I've gotten there. Wow. So this is one that came from the big group, and they really want to know. Did you ugly cry or wicked laugh while writing these two books?
Oh, it takes a lot to make me cry. So I did not cry, nor did I laugh, because I knew that there were going to be parts of this duet that were hard for readers, and so everybody's read it. Like everybody who's in here has read it, right? So I can talk without spoiler, right? I mean, spoiler. I knew from the very beginning that Owen was going to die. It wasn't just like a plot device. Like I just knew in the context of that story that his death was going to be something that was pivotal for Maxim and how he developed as a leader, and in what pushed him from saying, I want to change the world and fuck the system, to maybe I will have to work within the system, and seeing all politicians as corrupt, and then observing his brother, who was a very good man, who was working inside the system to make the world better. I knew that. And also there is a certain Kennedy mystique to the family. And I knew that there would be some element of tragedy that would kind of stalk this family a little bit. So, and it took that, those two books took a very long time to write. Like in when I think about it, how long it took me to write those books and the amount of research that it required of me, if I had known, I probably would have just not, I probably wouldn't have bothered. I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot.
Next question. When did you start thinking about writing The Kingmaker?
About a year and a half before it published, which for a traditional time frame is not long, but I published it as an indie, and that's a long time in the indie ecosystem for a book. So about a year and a half before I published it, I started the research, and I started I had these, like I said, I'd been looking at the pipeline dilemma, and then I started thinking about who would be the characters in this kind of context, and that's when Lennox started to come to me. Lennox came to me first, and I'd never written a Native American heroine, and I really, really wanted to do that. And that's part of why the research was so extensive, because I'm not Native American, and I don't take it for granted. I didn't want to be appropriative, and I also didn't want to be inaccurate. I know how it feels when an experience that's yours is taken by someone else, in a story, and misrepresented or presented without dignity. And so it was very, very important for me that be authentic and it be accurate. I even worked with a medicine man. I even, had a medicine man consult on the book to make sure that we were, there are these practices, these traditions and practices that are a part of Lennox's upbringing and, of her tribe. And I had a medicine man, and those particular ceremonies that I referenced, a medicine man oversees them. And so I consulted with a medicine man to make sure that it was accurate. And at one point he even said something like, I'm not sure that you can write it. I'm not sure that you should write it. And I think I've told this story before. My publicist was like, well, we have written and we've done a cover reveal in Entertainment Weekly, and this is happening. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I actually had a really scary moment where I was like, if he says that I can't write it, like if he says that, there's something about the way I've written it that is disrespectful or that doesn't lend dignity to that experience, then I will delay this book. I'm not going to publish something that when I consult with someone from that community, they say it's problematic. I will pull it. you know? And so he had not read it. And when he read it, he said, good job. So go ahead. But, you know, it was because he had read so many times, he had read that experience misrepresented. And he just assumed that that was something that I was going to misrepresent. But because of all the research, I guess, and the interviews and using native beta readers and as accuracy readers, I had 3 indigenous women, 2 from that particular tribe, beta read for me. And so I think that helped. I think that helped a lot.
Okay. Did you know when you started writing The Kingmaker that it was going to end up being the first book in a duet? Or was it supposed to be one book and then it just realized this can't be one book?
It was actually supposed to be a trilogy. It was supposed to be a trilogy, actually. And then I realized readers would be like, there will be pitchforks. And so, like with all the waiting, you know what I mean? It's like waiting once, then waiting again. And I was like, I just don't want the pitchfork energy. I do not want the pitchfork energy. And it was never a story that I thought was one book. Never. Because that book would have been over 200,000 words. Do you know what I'm saying? Because those 2 stories, sometimes I think you might look at a book and, you know, a duet and say, oh, you know, the author just basically wanted to do a duet, wanted to make twice the money, wanted to whatever, that it didn't have to be a, you know, because this one's 50,000 words and this one's 50,000 words. Both books are right at around 100,000 words, you know? So I knew this is not Outlander, you know, and most romance readers do not want the 200,000 word book, you know what I mean? And so for me, in looking at the scope of the story, I knew what it was going to take. And I knew this is bigger than what most romance readers are. It's palpable for them in one book. And that's why I divided it into 2, so that I could tell kind of that epic story. And it's a little bonkers, like that bonkers epic story, and not compromise on it. But at the same time, not do something that was, one, not as marketable, because I write from a passion leads me. That's the first thing I'm considering, is passion and purpose and intention and, you know, all of the things I've already talked about. But then after I've written the book, I take that artist hat off and I put my businesswoman hat on and I say, now, how do I sell this? You know, how do I find as many readers as possible who this story won't be for everyone? And I'm not looking to write books that are for everyone. But as a businesswoman, I want to find as many readers as it is for, you know? And so that's my job at that point as an entrepreneur, is how do I find. And also, I've invested a lot in this story, and I want it to have as wide of a reach as possible. I want as many people to find the story. If I really felt like this is something I was supposed to say at this time, then I want as many people to hear it as possible. And so for me, that's kind of how I approach it.
So let's talk literal cliffhangers.
Literal, right? Like hanging off a cliff. And I have to say, that was a little tongue in cheek.
Was it on your bucket list to do that at some point, or what the heck made you do it?
It was not on a bucket list, but when I started thinking about, it's so funny because I mentioned Nana Malone being one of the authors I would have in the room with me. There is an element of like kind of like suspense, you know, to the story. And I don't write romantic suspense. I write romance, you know, and the big mystery is, you know, how much sex are they going to have, you know, or how are they going to end up together? I don't really do suspense. But Nana does. And so when I was talking with Nana, I was like, okay, Nana, she interrogated me. And I'm telling her, okay, so this is going to happen. This is going to happen. She goes, but why? I don't understand, but why? And I'm like, stop asking me, but why? And she goes, well, your readers are going to ask, but why? And so it was really her interrogating me that shaped a lot of that, you know, and got me to the place where, and she was like, and they have to want to come back, you know, for the second part. I always knew that was where I would break the story, but I wasn't sure how I was going to break this story. Write it right around 100,000 words, So I knew what was going to happen, but I didn't know until I was writing it that she would be literally hanging off a cliff,
All right. Now that you've gone through, you've published, you've put it out there in the world, you've gone through the experience, you've gotten the feedback of putting a cliffhanger out there in the world, would you ever go through that process again? Would you ever do a cliffhanger again?
Absolutely. If the story called for it, I would not manufacture. Do you know what I mean? I'm not interested in manufacturing a cliffhanger. But if I feel that the scope of the story is something that stretches into 2 books, then I would be strategic about where I broke that book, and I would make sure that the reader wanted to come back for book 2. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you don't end book 1 with, and they're okay. Like they're pretty good guys. No need to come back for the second book. You know what I mean? It would have to make sense. So I would do it again. The next series that I'm writing is not that. It is interconnected standalone, similar to the Hoop series. Mm-hmm. So there won't be any cliffhangers. Each book will be self-contained with characters that kind of run around throughout the series. But I would do it, absolutely.
So this is one you've kind of already addressed, but just in case you have more to say about it. What inspired you?
I always have more to say about it.
Yes. What inspired?
I always have more to say about it.
What inspired you the most when you realized that you were writing a Native American heroine in The Kingmaker?
For me, like I mentioned, I'm a PK, so I grew up as a pastor's kid, and it probably influenced the way I think about my writing and my storytelling. And so I talk about storytelling. It's so funny because my next book is about filmmaking and Broadway and all kinds of stuff. And so as part of my, I'm so extreme, as part of my research, I have been taking master classes. So from filmmakers. So I've done master classes with Spike Lee, with Martin Scorsese, with Shonda Rhimes, with Issa Rae. I've done about 6 master classes, each of them like 12, 13 videos each over maybe like the last 2 or 3 weeks. So my life is basically just that. And I do that because I feel like my mission, I write missionally. I said that because when I was listening to Scorsese and Spike Lee, both of their master classes, they talked about storytelling the way I do. Both of them referred to storytelling as sacred. And that's how I think of it. Scorsese originally wanted to be a priest and then decided, no, I think I'll make these violent movies instead. That's my plan B. But he talked about how storytelling was sacred. And Spike Lee talked about, of course, a lot of activism in his work. And I think those two I identify with more than maybe any of the other masterclasses I've taken so far, because part of my mission, I see my mission is to take people who have been on the periphery of romance and firmly scooting them to the center. I grew up not seeing myself in romance. I grew up not seeing characters who looked like me getting the happily ever after. And so for me, part of my mission as a writer is to take those characters, whether that is Black, brown, queer, disabled, whatever that category of marginalization is, and centering them. And I'd never written a Native American here, and you don't see it very much in romance. And I think there's kind of a tradition of it in romance where, especially like in the 80s and the 90s, where it was appropriated and where it was in a lot of times mishandled and not lent dignity. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's a little bit of a tradition, the same way there is in filmmaking, where Native Americans were misrepresented. And it was important to me, obviously, to get that right, if I was going to do it. And I did want to do it. So.
Okay. You mentioned that you wanted to lend that Kennedy mystique into these books briefly before, and that leads directly into this in kind of answering this question. But did you draw inspiration from the Kennedy family when you created the Cade family? And it sounds like you did, but why did you want to bring that in?
I think that the Kennedys weren't perfect, you know, obviously. I'm always fascinated by, especially in that time, how leaders were perceived and what we knew about them. And then later on, what, you know, what comes out about who they actually were. And do we still manage to hold on to what is heroic about them, what their contributions were in spite of their own flaws? That's always fascinating to me. I think I play around a little bit with that in Queen Move too. When, you know, you look at her father's story and her being very protective of his legacy. I looked at in the 90s, especially, a lot started coming out about Martin Luther King Jr. And we had to grapple with, okay, there was a lot of infidelity, but did he, you know, but still, you know, look at what he did and what he accomplished. So when I looked at the Kennedys, I think there was, you know, the myth of Camelot and the things that they actually accomplished. And I think there was a sense of hope that came with this new guard of politician that came out of this family, almost as much with Robert as with, you know, in a different way as with JFK, because when Robert was assassinated, it was like, oh, you know, oh my gosh, like this was in a lot of people's minds, there was a string of assassinations and it just felt like lost hope. And I wanted to explore the idea of this family aspiring to change the world. You know what I mean? This family seeing almost from the beginning, this is a path by which we can have impact and change the world, even though the father's motivations were very different from the son's. You know, the father's ambition doesn't have a purity to it. I wanted to depict these two boys, you know, Owen and Maxim, who I mean, Maxim is unapologetically a capitalist. Like he talks about that. He talks about being a capitalist, but he still wants to change the world. You know, there are still amazing things that he wants to do. He's still very protective and advocating for the environment, like all of those. He recognizes his privilege. You know, I wasn't going to write someone who did in that position who didn't recognize their privilege and who didn't look for ways to give to people who did not have privilege and invest in communities that did not have privilege. I'm not interested in writing characters like that. So the Kennedy mystique, there was a lot that was what it was the hope and seeing these two brothers, because you do think of the Kennedys together, you know, these two brothers who there's a certain purity about their ambition and them wanting to change the world and how they eventually bond around that. That was, you know, interesting to me to see a family that, you know, had those ambitions.
So you've discussed that you don't intentionally write tropes, but they tend to show up in your duology.
Right.
Did you intentionally write the relationships that way? Or how do you see it in your series?
Right. Usually I go back and I have to tease out the tropes. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't start with trope, but I'm not allergic to tropes. And I understand why readers like tropes, you know, because it tells them what they can, you know, what we can expect. You know, this is what you're getting. And I completely get that. And so I don't avoid tropes. I just don't write from that place. I don't go, ooh, time to write a single dad. You know, ooh, here we go. You know, I'm going to do, you know, whatever. Ooh, there's only one bed. You know, I recognize those tropes and they're amazing. I just have to go back through and say, where are they? Like, I know there's some tropes in here. Let me tease them out because I recognize it's the two hats. You know, when I talk about myself purely as a creative who's going to write a story from a place of feeling compelled and feeling passionate and feeling like this is what I'm supposed to say. And then, okay, you did it. Now, how are we going to get it to people? How are we going to make people know what it is? And so at that point, I start teasing out the tropes. Like, I'm like, oh, he's a single dad. He's a single dad. You know, people love that stuff, you know? So I don't know. Did I answer that question? I don't know if I did answer that question.
Yes.
You did answer that question.
You did. Okay. Would you consider yourself a political junkie? And if so, what do you think about Leslie Jones' obsession with Steve Kornacki?
Oh, I haven't really paid attention to it very much, but I also watch CNN and not MSNBC, so that's probably why. Because he's on MSNBC, right?
He is.
Right. You're right.
But she's
So I'm
on
not
social media with her
right.
obsession, with her chart
Right.
blog.
I have not paid much attention to that. I don't think I'm a political junkie. I think that I like to know what's going on in the world. I think that if you don't know what's going on in the world, then sometimes you don't know how you can help. You know, it's like, how will I know what my responsibility is if I don't know what the problems are, or if I don't know, you know, the space that I should be occupying? So I'm not a political junkie, even though I guess people would perceive this as a political romance, you know. Um, but you won't believe this, but I hadn't thought about the fact that this series was happening in the lead up to the election. Like I didn't think about it until I'd already written it. You know, it's like, oh, okay. Um, so it's just what I felt like I was supposed to talk about, and then I realized, oh, am I going to convince people that it's not really a political romance? You know what I'm saying? Like, people are so tired of politics. Am I going to convince them this isn't a political romance? Because there are elements of politics in the books, obviously, but it grows out of not politics for the sake of politics. It grows out of the principles and the convictions of the characters. You know, I make a distinction. I'm not writing about you know, whatever, because I just want to write about whatever. I'm writing about missing and murdered Indigenous women, or whatever the topic is, because that's something this character would organically be passionate about. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I don't know if that makes sense, but you know, I'm not writing about voter fraud for the sake of writing about voter fraud. I'm writing about voter fraud because Kimba is somebody who cares about that. You know, she's a character who would care about it. And so to write that character authentically, I don't want to ignore it.
Yeah.
Diving a little bit more into politics, do you feel that in our lifetime we will see an independent president?
I don't know. I think it would be awesome. You know, I think that I have no idea. And you know, what people say to me all the time, like when things would get really ugly, my readers would post in the group, Maxim for president, you know, or you know, they would be like, sure would love to have Maxim right now, you know, that kind of thing. And I think I wrote Maxim out of my own desire to see a candidate who understands the system but doesn't. I can't remember what he says. The conventional thought is when you run, you scoot to the middle. You know, you scoot to the middle and you know, play that political game. And I think at one point, maybe in book 2, Kimba goes, well, this is what you do. You scoot to the middle. And Maxim's like, well, I'm not going to run, but if I ran, I certainly wouldn't scoot, you know, or something like that. You know, there's like a boldness, and I think also trusting people. Do you know what I mean? Trusting the American people to be over the bullshit, you know, and to say, I don't want political speak. Tell me what you really think. You know what I mean? Like, don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Don't tell me one thing in April and then another thing in October because you think that's most politically expedient. Be a person of conviction. Stand by it. And if I don't buy it, then I don't buy it. You know, and I think that's Maxim. Maxim's like, this is who I am. This is what I believe. You buy it or you don't buy it, but I'm not going to change it. And I think that that's not something that we have often. We do have a lot of people who are chameleons and who are disingenuous about their own convictions and their own beliefs to convince you that you should be on their side, you know? And I understand that, but I was really interested in writing a character who was like, I have convictions. These are what they are. I'm going to trust you as voters to decide, you know, based on what you believe, if I'm the best guy or not, you know? I was interested in writing that. And there's a certain idealism, you know what I mean? And I was interested in writing a character who had, even though he was wily, was at his core an idealist, you know, because I think that Maxim and Lennox are both idealists. They're both dreamers, you know, about what's possible. And then as they grow and grow and grow and mature, they figure out, oh, I can make this happen, but there is a system, you know, and I'm figuring out how to work this system without losing myself and without losing my convictions.
Okay, so I'm kind of happy you brought up the Thornbirds earlier. I grew up watching it too, because my mother loved it, and for some reason she let me watch this. And in retrospect, I can't actually believe that she let me stay up and watch it with her, because in retrospect, I was actually a little bit young to be watching that, but I loved it epically.
Right,
and maybe that might be kind of when I really started falling in love with romance. But be honest, are you talking with Shonda Rhimes yet about making All the King's Men into a miniseries for Netflix? Because if not, how do we make that happen?
Oh,
it's so epic in the spirit of something like the Thornbirds. And when I was writing this question, that was kind of what I was thinking. This is so like the Thornbirds. I need this as a mini series like the Thornbirds. I need that kind of mini series to come back, and this would be the perfect thing for it.
You know, I don't know if Shonda would be interested, because it might be too close to Scandal for her. But I will say, you know, just, you know, fun things are happening. I'll just say fun things are happening, and we are going to just wait for fun things to happen. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say.
That's all you need to say.
That's all I need to say. Fun things are happening that I cannot talk about yet. That's all I will say. Right.
Speaking of Hollywood calling, do you have have you dreamcasted or fan-casted your characters as you've created them?
Sometimes, like definitely sometimes. I didn't really have strong characters for like Dreamcast for Maxim and Linux. Like I have a Pinterest board, but it wasn't always the same person. You know what I mean? It would be like 3 different versions of them with similar physical characteristics. Sometimes I have a very strong sense of who it is. Like the book that I'm writing now, I have a Pinterest board and I have 6 different versions of the exact same people, you know? But right. Someone posted in my group the other day, there is there's a CBS show now called, I think, All Rise, and Simone, I can't remember her last name, but she has big curly kind of natural hair, and she's a judge, and somebody posted her as Kimba, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's perfect, you know. So occasionally I'll see somebody like that. I get the most questions about dreamcasting for Grip. I have a series called the Grip series, and that's the one I get the most dreamcasting about. Like everybody posts in my group at least once every week or so. This is my Grip, you know, this is my Grip. And then people are like, that is not Grip. You know, he's too this to be Grip. He's too this to be Grip. This is Grip, you know. So everybody has very, very strong opinions about Grip, more than any other book I've written.
Okay, I'm going to move on to Queen Move now. Did you know from the beginning you'd write Queen Move that Kimba would have a story?
No. I knew about halfway through, you know, because Kimba kind of explodes on the page. Like she's like, what I don't like is I don't like the sassy best friend, you know, like, ooh, girl, you know, like I don't like that caricature of the sassy best friend, because it's just so, for me, it's so like done, you know. So I think I rarely write the sassy best friend, but when you have, if I know if I have a best friend, she's gonna be badass, like she's gonna call me on my shit, she's going to be, you know what I mean? It's like, I think there's a difference between this caricature and somebody who is like, no, I'm going to tell you the real deal. You messed up. You know, this is how we fix it. You know, so, but when Kimba kind of exploded on the page in the duet, I was like, oh, she needs to book her out, you know? So I had no idea what that book was, but I just put it on Goodreads, you know, and sometimes I'll do that before I chicken out. As soon as I feel like this is supposed to happen, I don't even title, I just put it on Goodreads. And I'm like, that first instinct is right. I did that with the book that I'm writing now. I didn't know, it literally said book 1 of an upcoming series on Goodreads, you know, that I just put it there, and it didn't have a title, nothing. But I knew that I was supposed to write it. And that's how I felt about Kimba. And I did not know what Kimba's story was when I was writing the duet. And that's why I don't reveal a lot about her about her story, because I was still formulating it as I was writing that story. Like, who would be enough for her? You know, who would be secure enough for her? And I was very interested in writing a man who was not threatened by her, who was secure in his own path, you know.
The angst levels were very different between the duology and Queen Move. Was that an intentional choice to move from epic, bigger than life crises for your characters to more real life, everyday problems the average couples face?
I think that there was very much, I didn't intentionally say, okay, I'm going to write this one smaller, but I did recognize I wanted to tell a big story in a small space, like, if that makes sense. So, meaning it's epic in the sense of time, and it spans their entire lives, but it is, instead of like in Amsterdam and, you know, in the White House and all of that, it's taking place in his backyard. You know, he's tending a garden. You know, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's a different, I wanted to show a love that was really, really big, in a more confined space and in a different landscape and with a different feel. I think that was intentional in saying this love is as valid, you know, and as epic as this one, despite the circumstances. I was interested in juxtaposing those two experiences. And I recognize they're so different that there will be readers who are really, really into kind of the real everydayness of, when I say everydayness, you know, Kimba's wrestling with early menopause, you know, and they're dealing with blended families, and there will be readers who are really into that. And then there will be readers who are like, oh, you know, I love the drama. I love you know what I mean? And I think I wanted to, in one series, to give readers both, you know?
Okay. Kimba's father was obviously a person she drew a lot of inspiration and wisdom from. Who's that person for you in your life?
I think that person, sorry, my husband asked me a question, so I got distracted for a second. But you said, who was that person in my life?
Yeah.
My parents, I think. My parents inspire me more than anyone, you know, and they're not like civil rights leaders or anything. They are the kind of people who, when your neighbors don't have food, they take them food. You know, my mom did prison ministry, you know, when we were growing up, and she would go visit, you know, prisoners who didn't have family. You know, she would take gifts up to the orphanage at Christmas. Do you know what I'm saying? It was like, I saw them as kind, as generous, as honest, as principled. And that was the most inspiring, and continues to be the most inspiring thing to me, because it says to me, no matter how far you go, don't lose that. You know, don't ever lose that kind of core decency and compassion. That, to me, my parents are my heroes.
Okay.
We are used to having violet-eyed heroines in romance, but you went with a violet-eyed hero in Queen Move. Can you talk about that choice?
You know, honestly, it was a couple of things. One, when we talked about kind of like casting choices, I kept seeing, from Grey's Anatomy, the doctor from Grey's Anatomy, who, Jesse Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, somebody just said it in the chat. Jesse, yes. I kept seeing Jesse Williams, and he has kind of, bluish gray kind of eyes. And I wanted to play, and he is also, I'm pretty sure, biracial person. And I really wanted to connect him physically to his mother. Do you know what I mean? I wanted them to have that physical connection. And that was really kind of what went into it, was the combination of, in my mind, seeing Jesse Williams and his beautiful kind of blue gray, and at some point looking kind of Violet Huey eyes, and wanting him to share a physical characteristic with his mother.
Okay. Chess and chess rules are key themes in Queen Move. Do you play chess?
I do not. I mean, I do not play chess at all. And I was constantly like, is this real? Like, is this right? Am I getting this right? Am I, is this metaphor? Does it make sense? And so I don't, but I did love the Queen's Gambit. Loved it, loved it, loved it.
As a chess nerd, you did a good job.
Oh, yay! It's like, no, I don't play chess, but I stayed at a Holiday Inn last night.
Okay. Now on to questions about all three books.
Okay.
Did you make a conscious decision to choose characters of all different backgrounds in the books? Multiple versus singular diversity?
Definitely. Because you have everything from you have Jewish, you have Black, Aiko has like a Japanese father, and you have all of these things. And for me, I like writing books that reflect the world, as it is and as it's changing, and as cultures collide and begin to coexist. I really wanted to highlight that in this book. So I did make a conscious effort of representation, not like, let me see what else I can throw in there. But when you look at people's families, like, that's what people's families in so many cases look like. And I want to write that. It won't always be that way, but in this particular series, especially in Queen Move, I wanted to, and I also wanted to deal with navigating blended families. I really wanted to do that, not in a drama-ish way, and there is drama with Aiko at one point, but they're basically friends. Like, there's frustration when she realizes that he's moved on and she wasn't ready to move on, but they're basically friends who put their kid first. And that's what I like to see. You know what I mean? Where it's not about baby mama drama, it's more like, hey, let's be grown folks. Let's put our kid first. Let's figure out how to coexist, for their sake. And so that's kind of what I wanted to demonstrate.
You leverage very strong and meaningful quotes throughout these books. Did you start with the quotes, or did you go back and find them and add them in?
A lot of times, and this sounds crazy, the quotes find me. Usually I give myself a lot of space to write. And so over the course of 6 to 9 months writing a book, which is why my friends write 4 to 6 books a year, and I only write maybe like 2. I'm lucky if I write 2, which the indie ecosystem is not a lot. But I give myself a lot of time, and I find the songs find me, just like when I talked about Trampoline, the songs find me. I had it happen today where the character's last name found me, and part of the reason I like to give myself a lot of space is because, and I know this sounds crazy, if you've read Elizabeth, I can't think of her last name, Eat, Pray, Love, Elizabeth, I can't think of her name. Somebody will put it in the chat in a second. But Eat, Pray, Love, Elizabeth, she has a book. Gilbert, thank you. She has a book, and I can't think of the name of it right now. Yes. Yes, Big Magic.
One of my favorites. Yep.
One of my favorites. And one of my friends was reading it and she's like, this is weird. And I was like, it is. That's exactly what writing is like for me. You know what I mean? Because she talks about stories, and this will sound like do, but she talks about stories already existing, you know, and she talks about the writing process, the creative process, as almost metaphysical, as almost like the story is out there. Who's going to find it? You know, who's going to pull it into this realm, which I know sounds like the Twilight Zone. But for me, there is an element of that when I'm writing. Like today, and I'm always like, it always makes me feel like, you know how I talked about, I'm like, what am I supposed to be saying right now? What am I supposed to be talking about? And that's, for me, storytelling is not just a vocation, it's a calling, and that it's sacred. And so for me, I bump into these quotes, I bump into these songs, I bump into these things that are like signals for me the whole time. You're writing the right thing. You're on the right track. And so that's what happens with these quotes most of the time. I'm not just like, oh, let me Google quotes on politics. You know, I mean, it's much more organic than that. And when I bump into those things, for me, it's like signal post, you're on the right track. You're writing the right thing. Keep going. And it's almost like the universe, not the universe, but whatever the universe is that tells stories for me, it's like saying, I'm with you. You know, you're not doing this by yourself. And there are certain aspects of story that feel like I didn't come up with that. That was something that came to me, you know? Yeah.
It's one of my favorite books, as I said. And yes, very true.
I love it. I love it. And yeah, I love it. Anyway.
Okay. So now we are moving on to what's new with you questions, or at least hoping and digging for an update. What can you tell us about Grimm's extended novella, The Killer and the Queen, that you're writing with Sierra Simone?
Right. 2020 was a bitch of a year, and really, it took everything for me to write Queen Move. I've talked about this in other interviews, so some people may have heard it. My identity was stolen. We moved the day of the pandemic into Atlanta. They shut the city down. We ended up staying in, I wrote most of Queen Move in Airbnb while the IRS was trying to sort out the fact that I didn't start a company in Utah and hadn't paid taxes on it. I mean, it was like, you know what I mean? It was a very stressful time, and it took everything for me to write Queen Move. And after I wrote it, I knew I'm not going to write anything else for the rest of the year. I knew that because it was, we were in a pandemic, and my son, as a lot of people know, my son is severely autistic, and this pandemic has been very, very hard on him and on my family. And I knew I didn't have the capacity to give my stories what I usually give, and also give him what he needed. There are limits to me. And I just said, okay, no more stories this year, you know, no more books. And I released like a box set of existing, you know, you can do stuff like that, things that you don't have to come up with, but my well was completely dry. And you were asking me for an update, weren't you? So now I am at a place where the book that I'm writing right now, I'm so excited about, and I haven't been excited about anything since I started writing Queen Move, which was almost a year ago. You know, at this point, when it came out almost a year ago. And I had to let that, and a lot of writers don't feel the liberty to do this. And I understand that, because writing is also how you make a living. You know, it's also how you pay your bills. It's all of those things. But for me, I can't write like that. I can't crank out books. You know, I wish I could. I really do wish I could. I'm not just saying that. But when I dry and as stretched as I was last year, I'm afraid of what I would produce under those circumstances. I don't know that I would be proud of it. And I don't know that it would be representative of a brand that I have curated. You know what I mean? Like, I hope there is something you think of when you think of a Kennedy Ryan book, and it would not have been whatever that is, it wouldn't have been it. So I let the story come to me, you know, like what is exciting to me. And I came across a quote from Dorothy Dandridge, and I'm gonna ruin it, I'm gonna misquote it, but the essence of it, she said, if I had been born white, I would have owned the world. And I don't know if you guys remember back in the 90s when Halle Berry did Introducing Dorothy Dandridge. She was not a household name, but she was this massive talent. She was so beautiful. And the system and the era she was born into suppressed that. And that's really what her quote is getting to. And so I started being really fascinated about untold stories and about light that had been suppressed from stars who should have shone brighter and longer and broader than they got to. And I started looking at, especially with the protests that happened this past summer, the impact that that started to have on Hollywood and how we're seeing stories and the representation we're seeing, and that there's been an explosion of creative agency for marginalized people. When you look at things like, and this was in production before, but when you look at Lovecraft Country, you know, when you look at Sylvie's Love, you know, when you look at all these, One Night in Miami by Regina King, there's an explosion of creative agency where marginalized people are not waiting for gatekeepers to say, it's okay for you to make this, or I'll tell your story for you. Like that, it is us uninterrupted and uninterpreted. And that is fascinating to me. And so I see that as almost like a renaissance going on in Hollywood. And then that made me think about another time when we were seeing that kind of explosion of creativity among Black and brown people in the Harlem Renaissance. And so that is what got me to thinking about leveraging this kind of season of creative agency we're experiencing in Hollywood with a parallel of the kind of explosive creative growth we saw in the Harlem Renaissance, and writing a story within that story. And of course, lots of open door sex and amazing angst. You know, you're going to get all of that. But it's going to be wrapped around this idea that there are so many people who made amazing contributions. You know, the man who wrote the Charleston, a Black man, they called the invisible pianist, because nobody knows he wrote it. You know, it's like when you think about the Charleston, his name doesn't come to mind. You don't know that he wrote it, but he literally, they called him the invisible pianist. And so I'm like, those are stories that weren't told and that we don't know. And I'm very interested in unearthing. And so that's what I'm working on.
So that's the one that you're going to release. It sounds like maybe this summer once the audiobook comes out that you
right.
talked about.
Like probably the first week in June. I'm writing it now, and I'll be done in time for the narrators to do. It takes a while, like when you're doing it, and the indie process looks very different than the traditional process, obviously. But when you're doing it yourself, because I also produce my own audiobooks, I do my own audiobooks. Some I sell to publishers, but I've, like All the King's Men duet was the first time I published my own audio, and I'm a control freak, so I love that experience. And I'm doing that with this one too. So I have to give them about 6 to 8 weeks to record it. So hopefully like the first week in June.
Okay. And I noticed on social, you made an announcement earlier this month about another series that's going to be.
Oh, you also asked about Sierra Simone. I'm sorry, I didn't answer that. It will be this Christmas. Okay, I was telling you guys about how bad 2020 was, because 2020 ate our novella.
It's okay.
You're fine.
Well, the follow-up on that then is just the content we read in the Christmas Crown, which was part of Christmas in the City anthology. Is it going to be included in it, or is this going to be just completely brand new?
I think, and Sierra, I don't know, Sierra's probably not watching. We haven't talked about this, but I think we will probably be in sync. I would lean toward including it, because there will be people who haven't read it. You know, I would be inclined to include it and make it one big story, you know, so it would all be in context. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I would rather do that, so that it's all there for one person, for the reader. They don't have to like go find that first part, and it's more stressful for me to like, no, read this one first. No, it's like, it's over here. Like, okay, it's free right now. Go get it. It's like, I don't want that. I don't want that. I just want it to all be right there.
Okay. Well, let's keep talking about other new things that you're doing, because you made a big announcement though earlier this month about another series, and it sounds like that was going to be 2022-ish that you're working
You're talking
on.
About the traditional deal.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about at least what that is, because that's big news for you.
It is very big news. I always knew that I was going to go. I started in traditional publishing, and I always knew I was going to go back. But I will continue to self-publish too. But I knew that for the trajectory of my career, I would need to, for what I see for my career, I would need to find a partner, a traditional partner for certain goals and certain things that I want, certain places I want my stories to go. And so it's so funny because my agent was like, we should pitch. Feels so funny. My agent, I feel so like I should have a cigarette. I don't know. Like I should have a cigarette and a brandy. So my agent, just feels so weird. But so my agent, she was like, we need to pitch something, and I was like, I don't work that way. Like you have heard me talk about how I arrive at stories. So I'm not like, okay, let me come up with something I want to pitch. That's not how I organically come to stories. So it feels very antithetical for me to say, I just want to pitch something. And my husband, funnily enough, he goes, what about that book you wrote like 10 years ago? And I was like, what? That one? And it ended up, that's the book that I pitched. A lot has changed, but it's called Hindsight. And the couple at the core is the same. It's a divorced couple. And I'm very, very, because it's beyond the marriage in crisis trope, because we were in crisis and then we got a divorce. So it is definitely a journey. I'm really, really excited about it because it takes place in Atlanta and it's 3 women. And I think people probably pick up on the fact that a lot of my books have very strong elements of women's fiction. People are constantly like saying, Kennedy writes women's fiction, not romance. And I'm like, but there's fucking, and there's a happily ever after, and there's a couple. So, I'm here for the romance. But I also am very interested in the woman's journey. That usually takes precedence for me. So it feels like women's fiction a lot of times. But I see it as both. I don't like to make that choice. I don't want to make choices to fit into people's ideas of what I should write or who I should be. So yeah, I'm very excited about that. The first book is called Hindsight, and the series is called Skyland. And it takes place in the suburbs of Atlanta, and it's 3 great women. And I was talking before about how I wanted to depict women who are very powerful, very assured, very smart, but maybe, one of them or 2 of them or whatever is a stay-at-home mom, and has decided my enterprise is my family. My priority, what I was put on this earth to do, is to make these amazing humans and deploy them, into the world to make it a better place. And that's a noble calling. And so I'm interested in this series in depicting some of that.
We have reached our rapid fire round. So for those of you that haven't attended before, these are random questions that Kennedy gets about 2 seconds to answer. And
I suck at these things, you guys. Like, I just want you to know, I tell people this every time we get to like a rapid fire. I remind people that once on Wicked Wallflowers, they asked me for my favorite female superhero, and I said Jane Eyre. So, okay, that's how bad it is. That's how slow my synapses fire in these rapid fire things. Go, we can go.
We do pretty easy ones. Prince Charming or Reformed Rake?
My husband is a Prince Charming, so I would say Prince Charming.
Coffee or tea when reading?
What'd you say?
Coffee or tea when reading?
Well, I have unsweet tea right here, so probably tea. I don't drink coffee. I think I've had maybe 1 cup of coffee in my whole life. I don't drink coffee, so tea or Diet Coke.
Yes. Chocolate or vanilla?
The aforementioned Diet Coke.
Okay. Chocolate or vanilla?
Are we talking about ice cream?
Anything. Just flavor in
Vanilla.
general.
Vanilla.
Paper, or audio?
Oh, audio. Like I don't even, my eyes don't work anymore. Like to read paper or a Kindle. Audio is everything to me now. When my friends send me ARCs, I'm like, do you have it in audio? They're like, Kennedy, it's an ARC. I'm like, I know. Like, do you have it in audio? Because I can't read anymore. So it's a real problem.
Tall, dark, and handsome, or thick and beefy?
Both. Can't you be tall and dark and handsome and thick and beefy?
Yes.
Why are these characteristics mutually exclusive? I'm a greedy bitch.
Early bird or night owl?
Night owl. Oh my gosh. I will be up for another 6 hours, you guys. Like I don't go to bed. I try to make myself go to bed. I've been trying to take melatonin. It makes me stay up. I drink tea, like chamomile tea. I am still up at 3 a.m. listening to podcasts. So I'm a night owl. I definitely am.
Idris Elba or Michael B. Jordan?
Idris Elba. Is this a real thing? I guess there are people who would choose Michael B. Jordan over Idris. So I don't want to disparage your choice, but for me, oh my gosh, Idris all day, especially now that he has like a little gray in his beard. It's so sexy. Oh my god.
Such a daddy.
Such a daddy, man.
Such a silver fox.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, cats or dogs?
You know, I'm not really an animal person very much, but I have had dogs in the past, and I'm probably more dog. We'll probably end up getting a dog for my son, so dog.
Winter mountain getaway or warm island hideaway?
Warm island hideaway all day, definitely. We lived in San Diego for 3 years, and I literally told my husband, this state is my spirit animal. Like, I was born to live in California, and now we live in Atlanta. So, and I love Atlanta because we've lived here for 20 years before San Diego, but I missed having palm trees in my backyard and it being like 75 degrees 90% of the year. It was perfect.
All right, wine, red, white, or rosé?
You know, I don't really drink that much wine. I like a good lemon drop every once in a while, but I don't drink wine on a consistent basis. I drink Diet Coke.
The answer to all Kennedy's questions is Diet Coke.
Diet Coke.
We've got that noted.
It is my libation of choice. My unlibation of choice. My libation of choice is a lemon drop.
All right. Is there anything else that we haven't hit on that you want to talk about?
This has been comprehensive. I feel like you guys know my bra size and what kind of tampons are under my sink. I mean, I feel like you have probed me.
We tried.
You did it. I know nothing except thank you guys for reading. Like it's amazing to have had you go through this. So thank you. This was fun. Thank you for letting me talk about all of it.
If you can give us 15 more minutes, we will open up the lines for Q&A.
Okay.
We've managed to keep 16 people with us this late, which is so good because we're actually kind of late at night. So let me see if I can unmute everybody here. Ask all to. Okay. I've now basically asked people to unmute. So if you want to ask a question, you can unmute yourself and ask a question. If we've got any. Go ahead.
So this was in a different book club. We were talking about how do you feel like romance smashes the patriarchy? How do you feel like that it does?
Do you mean in my books or just like in general?
Like, what a part of romance do you like? Do you think that you were attracted to because of smashing the patriarchy?
I think that when I first started reading romance, I was so young. I was in the 8th grade. So I wasn't thinking about the patriarchy. I was thinking like, this is how you have sex. I was like, he puts it in there. I mean, I just didn't, you know what I mean? I was like, so in the 8th grade, because I found romance really early, I think it was more giving me an introduction to how this relationship thing works, which is disturbing considering I read A Pirate's Love where he kidnapped her and there was some dubious consent going on. And I was like, now does this happen? But I think that now it's my favorite thing about romance, because I believe that even then it was revolutionary to see women's pleasure. I think that to see, and I think that's also why there is some cultural derision, is because anytime you say women have agency, women can touch themselves, women can unabashedly enjoy sex and demand fulfillment, anytime you see that, and anytime you see powerful women, and anytime you see an industry that is this successful and is driven by women storytellers and people who center women's story, you are flying in the face of patriarchy. Because you're saying we're here, we are important, our stories matter, the things that we're concerned with matter, and yes, we like sex. So I think romance, everything about romance flies in the face of patriarchy, the fact that it exists. I think that we are in a space now, as far as romance is concerned, where certain storytellers are being very intentional. So I think there's two things going on. One, the existence of romance tears down the patriarchy. Do you know what I mean? Because it centers women and it centers women's pleasure. But then I think that we've moved into a phase of romance where we haven't always been, where certain storytellers are being very intentional about attacking the patriarchy through their story arcs. I'm one of those. Do you know what I mean? It's important to me. And they're like Sarah does that, obviously. Sierra Simone does that. I think like there are a lot of us who are doing that. Adriana Herrera does that very, very well. When people ask me, who would you recommend I read that's like you? And I don't know who that is. I don't, because like I told you, I don't think that way, but I know that Adriana and I come from a very similar place of creative conviction where we are interested in writing about things that are going on right now. And we're also interested in hot sex. So when people ask me, if I want to read someone else like you, I always say, Adriana and I have very different writing styles, but we write from a very similar place. So,
okay. I'm seeing one pop up in the chat window. Who is your favorite hero of all time?
I think Derek Craven is, I have several. I mentioned Allegretto because I'm making distinctions. Allegretto from Kinsale, I already told you, don't ask me about Kinsale because I'm like a free bleeder if you ask me about Kinsale. But her hero from Shadowheart, definitely. But I think Derek Craven, that's a Kleypas hero. Probably Derek Craven. I'm sure there are others, but he's consistently in my mind. And there are certain heroes, and I say he's one of my favorites, but I can't think of his name right now, which is ridiculous. But there are certain books I read every year as like a part of my reader diet. Like even if I don't feel like it, I reread certain books every year, and then I do feel like it once I start. And one of them is How to Kill a Rock Star by Tiffany de Bortolo. I love that book. I have like 4 copies of it. It is a travesty that they have not put it on audio yet because I need to experience that. But that hero, and I can't even remember his name right now, which is ridiculous. But that hero, because he is not your typical romance hero. He's scrawny. He has like his hair is everywhere. He's pale, and he's not like this huge guy. He's not muscular, but he is so charismatic and compelling because of his wit, and he's an artist. And my favorite thing to write is creatives. A lot of people assume because of the Hoop series, and that's how a lot of people meet me, that I write sports romance. That for me is an anomaly. If you look at the broader catalog of what I write, you see a lot of creatives, you see poets, you see singers, you see, what I'm writing now. I'm writing directors, I'm writing costume designers, I'm writing singers and songwriters and actresses. It's Broadway, it's Hollywood. Art is where I love to write. So, yeah.
You brought up music. I have a question on that. Do you ever post out playlists that go along with your books to Spotify?
Oh, yeah. Every book has a playlist. I usually try to include it at the end of the book. I don't know. I know I did for Queen Move. I'm pretty sure I did for Queen Move. I have them for every book because, again, I've only been actively writing the book I'm writing now for like 2 weeks. Like I've been doing research for a while, but actually sitting down and typing, which is what people think of as writing. And I have 60 songs on that playlist. Like I said, music writes my books in a lot of ways. So there's always a playlist. And if anybody like follows me on Spotify, all of the playlists are there. You know what I mean?
Sabrina, go ahead.
Are there any books that have been announced that you're really, really excited to see coming out in the next year or two that we should add to that? Like, I don't know how to ask that. I'm so sorry.
Oh, books that I'm excited about?
Yeah, that have been like announced that they're going to be released. So
I am giddy to get the latest from Talia Hibbert. Mm-hmm. Eve Brown. I have an arc of that. I did ask her, is there an audio? No, Kennedy, no, there's no audio. I'm like, dang damn it. Nice try. I just love doing Talia's accent, actually. But so that one, of course, Zio, hers, I'm going to say the title wrong. I'm really bad. I told you guys I'm bad on my feet this way, but The Girl with Stars in Her Eyes, is that?
Yeah.
That sounds right.
That sounds right. She did another cover reveal for it like 2 days ago or a few days ago. I'm really excited about that one. I think I have an arc of it. I get arcs of a lot of things that I don't get to actually read, but I want to read that one. Vanessa Riley's Island Queen. Very excited about that one. Kate Clayburn has a new one coming.
Yes.
I love Kate. Like I think she is one of the finest romance writers ever. So I'm always excited about anything she announces. Joan Vassar, who wrote Black. It's like a 5-part series. She's releasing book 5, I think, this year. I'm very, very excited about that. I think and Sarah's new series, of course. I don't know. I can't remember when I know she's writing it now. I can't remember when it's releasing. But I'm excited about that. I love Kerrigan Byrne. Like, I love her with the passion of like, I love Kerrigan Byrne with like old school passion. When I read her series, I'm not going to say it right. You guys know the one I'm talking about. The name, like that first big series that she put out with the Highwaymen. Right. Like
Victorian Rebels.
Rebels,
yes,
yeah.
Thank you. And she has, I think her new series is like The Good Girls.
Good Girls.
Right. I'm very excited about those books. Because what it really comes down to is not that, I mean, sometimes it's the story itself, but then there are some people that for me, I'm like, if you publish a phone book, I'm excited. And so it's sometimes for me more about the author even than the book itself. And those are some of the ones that stand out for me. Oh,
there's some audio.
One more. I can't. The Gathering of Dragons, book 3 of that series, The Gathering of Dragons, because the first book was in my tops for 2020. Like it's so itty, and barbaric, but also somehow powerfully feminist that I adored it. So book 3 of that series, The Gathering of Dragons, too.
I was going to say, I don't have
Nice.
questions. I was going to say, you're brilliant. It comes across tonight in your talk with us and definitely in your writing. Your word choices are, I think, engrossing, and you do such a good job of making it something that I want to read. And I'm a tough critic, they'll tell you. I have a really hard time reading books.
I love tough critics.
Because my brain just moves too quickly. You may understand that problem. And so thank you. These books were really, really good. And I really appreciated the time that you put into them. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Like, that means a lot to me. Thank you. And knowing you're toughie makes it even, knowing that you're tough makes it even more special somehow.
Amy read the first 2 books in one weekend, and Amy never reads the books in one weekend, much less 2 books in one weekend ever.
Well, I did leave
contemporary.
So
I'm a historical person, so it's
I am too.
Yeah, and so for me to get through 2 contemporary books back to back in one weekend with 3 kids, 2 dogs, 2 cats, we're down to 6 ghost shrimp and a husband. I'm just saying.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you.
I just have a more superficial question. First, yes, absolutely adore the books, but I loved this cover model for Queen Move, and I just looked up her name. Did you pick her? I remember you were saying and I think I heard you in a podcast, but she's beautiful, and I was just wondering how fun and how did you find her?
My gosh.
Yeah.
First of all, you have to understand that covers are an epic journey, and everybody who works with me hates me by the end of every cover. This was no exception. We spent, I think we did that cover shoot in like January or February of last year. And we started looking for the models in October. So it took us 5 months. What is that? 5 or 4 months of me going, ew, no, never, no, thank you. Put it back, return to sender on everything. And they were so frustrated with me, and they were like, Kennedy, like, and I'm like, she's out there. We are going to keep looking until we find her. And so we found her, and then we did this whole cover shoot. My publicist, that sounds as weird as my agent, but she flew, I need my cigarette, my publicist, but she flew. I couldn't be in Atlanta. I was living in Charlotte at the time. So she literally flew. She lives in Philadelphia. She flew to be on site at the cover shoot in Atlanta. And I was on like FaceTime or whatever, one of those, Skype, Zoom, something the whole time. And we shot everything, but we forgot to get her hair curly. So all of the shots were with her hair straight. And it didn't click for me. And then when all of the photos came back, I was like, did we not get curly shots? And they were like, no, you were there. We didn't get curly shots. And I said, you guys, this is why people hate me. And I was like, well, we have to have it. And they were like, no, Kennedy, that was like 2-3 weeks ago. We can't just do the whole shoot again. And I was like, why not? She's still around. We still got the dress. You still got a camera. Let's do it again. We got to get curly shots. And we did it again. We did the cover shoot again, and we got the curly shots. And I was like, I told you, it's the curly shot. It's the curly shot. And that became the cover, and it's so interesting because even with All the King's Men, we did that cover shoot. We did 2 cover shoots for that one too. We did that cover shoot. And then I was like, none of these are right. We need to do a whole new cover shoot, new models, new wardrobe, new location. And we did it. And when it came back, I was like, I like the first one's better. And they hate me. I'm telling you, they hate me. And she was like, are you saying that we did a whole other cover shoot with like new models and everything, but you're now saying you like the first one better. I was like, that's it. I like the first one better. So covers are a really, really big deal for me. And I'm working on the cover for real now. And it is, I mean, it's the hardest thing. We've had like 6 Zoom calls in 2 weeks about this cover, and we are casting the model now. And when I found her name is Lachey, I was just like, this is Kimba. Like, this is Kimba. And I couldn't stop watching her videos. Like, she has videos of herself like by the pool. I was like, oh, I'm mesmerized. Like, I can't stop. I'm creeping on her, you know? But she was perfect. To me, she was perfect as Kimba. So I'm glad you like it.
Just real quick too, were you really thrilled when it was selected as like Oprah selected it as one book of the year too? Cool.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, it's so funny because it came out right when all of the protests like were happening, literally like the next week. And it felt so strange to be promoting a book with all that was going on. And then, you know, they had the big blackout thing, like that, you know, like the blackout book list and all that stuff. And what was even more meaningful to me was that Oprah selected it as one of those books. There were only 3 books, and the other 2 were not even romance. And not Oprah herself, but the editors selected Queen Move. And that was so meaningful to me in a time when I felt like I should not be shouting about this book. I should not be promoting this book. To see it repurposed, you know what I mean? To see it in context of what was going on, presented as something that people should investigate, you know, alongside books that weren't romance. They were just books, or they were like, this says something about where we are right now. That was even more meaningful to me, you know, in certain ways.
Any other questions? Oh, good.
Anyone else? Okay. Well,
I don't have a question. I just want to thank you guys for hosting. This has been awesome. Kennedy, thank you so much. And this is Jasmine in Georgia with you. Hey! Yeah, that's it though. I'm terrible. I like every time it's like questions on the spot. Like I never have anything, but watch when it's over. I'm gonna think of a question.
Well, I'm so glad you were here. It's good to see you.
Yes.
well, Kennedy, thank you so much for giving us your time for this, and
I loved it. Thank you for having me.
And being such a good sport for me, completely spamming the bejeebus out of your Instagram for the last 3 months.
I love it.
And but it has just been an absolute delight. And so thank you very, very much for spending the evening with us.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you guys for having me. I mean that. Thank you.
And thank everyone for coming tonight. And
thank you guys.
Small plug for next month's book. Donna, help me. It's
Loretta Chase.
10 Things I Hate About the Duke, Loretta Chase. We will be back here on February 22nd with Loretta. So.
And I totally took notes tonight that I will share with all the TBR list editions.
Oh, I probably was a lot.
It was. And I'm going to make recommendations for OSRBC to add for our monthly reads, because I was like, oh, we got some Laura Kinsale. We got some things to add. So we need to add that for the monthly poll. So thank you.
I'm always interested in how I don't hear Kinsale's name as much. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
She's huge. I mean, in my mind, she's huge. And I don't hear her name as much as some of the others, which is fine, but yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was like, ooh, that needs to be on the monthly poll. Like, we need to be reading this.
We read Flowers for the Storm when